Probably in order of, importance in my life. Yeah. Right up there, the top three.
I'm happy to be on that list. Birth Your Daughter, Birth Your Son podcast with Behzad.
Right in the middle there.
Sitting in the driver's seat.
Welcome to Auto Care on Air, a candid podcast for a curious industry. I'm Behzad Rassuli, Senior Vice President of Strategic Development at the Auto Care Association, and this is The Driver's Seat, where we embark on insightful, one-on-one conversations with leaders steering the companies that are shaping tomorrow's landscape.
I do want to tell you, though, before I start this, that when we started the podcast, I asked, what kind of guests I should have on. And the idea is that, I get to speak to some pretty high level executives all around the industry. And your name was it repeatedly came up. It came up from customers. It came from employees. It came from vendors. There seems to be kind of a unanimous affection for you, good to work with, good to work for, business is good. And so on the personal side, as I looked into your story, I was really excited to talk to you because it's not common. It's common to find an entrepreneur. It's common to find a CEO. It's common to find somebody who's running a 40, 50-year-old business, but it's not common to find that person who is all three. The person who started the business, has been running it for 40 years, and has seen everything that comes and goes with that business. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your story, learning about you, and I'm certain that everybody who listens to this will as well.
Well, thank you for the kind words.
So I gave the outline of, the skeleton of maybe your career, but can you tell me just for everyone a little bit about Parts Authority?
Sure. Well, Parts Authority actually started in 1973. My brother-in-law started the company, actually, Yaron Rosenthal, opened a store in Queens, our first store in 1973. And in 1976, I think it was, he opened a foreign auto parts store a block away. So he had two stores, one foreign and one domestic. And then in about 1980, myself and another brother-in-law, Dave Wapman, joined the company. I was still going to college at the time, and the two stores were Clearway and Clearway Foreign Auto Parts. In 1984, I became a partner in the business and opened up the third store in the chain, and we call that one Pro Parts. And the fourth store was a couple of years after that, and another partner came into the business. His name is Steve Yanofsky, and the name of that store was Cap Auto Parts, and Cap was an acronym for Clearway Auto Parts. So 4 stores, 4 different names. So we were going for the record. And finally, when the time the 5th store came around, we decided, we better, come up with a common name to go forward with. And we decided on Parts Authority. And the reason was, it was a great name to go forward with, but we could also go back and kind of make it retroactive. So Clearway Auto Parts, your Parts Authority, Pro Parts, your Parts Authority. And then going forward, when we did acquisitions, which at the time we really didn't contemplate, but when we went forward, when we made acquisitions, we also said powered by the Parts Authority or your Parts Authority. So it ended up working out to be a great name for us.
So sitting here today, Parts Authority is over 300 stores.
Over 300 locations right now.
And employees.
Several thousand employees.
Several thousand. So when you go take yourself back to Randy Bowler, 1980, opening his first parts store, were you picturing 300 plus stores and several thousand employees and being CEO of this giant organization, or was it just a business owner selling parts?
Great question. So my first store was 1984. That's when I became a partner. I was 24 years old. So in those days, I was definitely not contemplating having anywhere near the size. It was definitely maybe add a store here, add a store there. But we definitely weren't contemplating anything, this big.
Yeah, so in the 80s, when you were growing up, I mean, parts stores were much more predominant, right? They're just kind of, there were obviously 4 or 5 in a neighborhood that you and your family
I don't know if they're more predominant because the retailers kind of came in and opened thousands and thousands of stores. So there's actually, I think, more auto parts stores than there ever were.
Got it.
But the mom and pop, the family-owned stores and jobber stores kind of went by the wayside because they really couldn't compete with, the power of the retail stores, the financing, and just the economies of scale. So if you had a Behzad's auto parts store in whatever town, and all of a sudden AutoZone opened up and O'Reilly's opened up. They had big, beautiful, fresh stores. They did marketing. It was very difficult to compete on a retail level. And I think they definitely won the battle of attrition there on the retail front.
Well, you're obviously still around and very successful. So, you found a niche in the market.
Yeah. Well, our niche is really selling to the professional installers and providing, that extended inventory, both domestic parts, foreign parts, and forging that partnership with the installer customer. That's really our business, is really getting the cars off the lifts at the repair shop level. And that's always been our secret sauce from the very beginning. And I think, still we have a pretty big advantage over the retailers when it comes to that.
So you said when you were 24, that was when you first became a partner. And I think you alluded to the idea that you'd always own some kind of business. What in your upbringing made you think, or had made others think, that you'd ultimately own a business?
Just when I was a kid, from when I was a young teenager, I always had, some kind of side business, whether it was mowing lawns or snow shoveling in the winter, or selling jeans at the flea market, or 5 or 6 other things. I was always doing something, to make some, extra money. And in those days, it was really just we didn't have Nintendo or Xbox in those days, so we had pinball machines. So just if you like to play pinball, you could spend a few bucks a week just doing that, a few bucks on an evening. So just have some spending money, just everything, waxing cars, just hustling to make some extra bucks. So I always had that kind of gene in me, and it continued throughout business. So once I got the opportunity, the auto parts store, that was a really fast-moving environment for me, and I was lucky enough to get the opportunity and took advantage of it.
What did you study did you go to college?
Yeah, I went to college, and just a quick story on that. My father passed away when I was 17, very suddenly, and I really hadn't given
sorry to hear that.
Too much of it, thought at that time. I had 3 sisters, and for a minute I thought maybe I shouldn't even go to college. Maybe I should just start working and help out my mom and everything. And one day I went to visit a friend of mine's father, who was a very successful guy, and he said, "Look, I know you your whole life, Randy. You're going to end up in business, in your own business. So the best thing you could do is go to college, get an accounting degree, and never be an accountant. Take 6 months off after college, go look around, travel, take a camera with you, take pictures of signs and look at marketing and then take that knowledge with you when you open a business. But you're going to be in business, and accounting is the best background. And that was like the best advice I ever got, because that's been a big help for me in running my business. And still to this day, it's been a very big help. All the skills you learn as an accountant are very transferable to a business like mine.
So that's, incredible advice to get. And it's
very lucky I got that advice.
Yeah. So when you have the 4 stores between kind of family members and a business partner, and you change the brand, what made you, when did it start accelerating from there? What happened after from 4 stores to maybe, 10 stores or something?
Well, each one of our stores, were, extremely successful. From the very beginning, Clearway and Clearway Forward were, 2 killer stores. They were great. And I learned the auto parts business from those 2 locations and those two stores. So when I opened my store, we had both foreign parts and domestic parts. And in 1984, that was really at the beginning of the Japanese parts invasion. Mm-hmm. So that was having foreign parts. And I remember being on the road calling on customers and said, "Oh, you got foreign parts? Okay, we'll buy foreign parts from you like that. We can give you right away." So that was a great door opener for me in my store, and continued to be. So we grew slowly, right? Remember, I told you our mindset was, open a store here, open a store here. That's what we did. And so really up until probably 2005, maybe we had only 10, 11 stores at that point.
Oh, wow.
We did.
So like 20 years, and it's still just like a few
These
stores.
are pretty big stores, and, our company grew, and Parts Authority was still a force to be reckoned with, but just nowhere near the size.
But in a specific market, where was the market?
It's all in New York.
Okay.
All in New York.
Yeah.
And all Long Island and Queens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the catalyst, if you want to look at a catalyst event, our industry was always kind of far behind in technology. We first computerized our stores in 1981, which was pretty early. We had a great computer conversion. I remember I wasn't involved in it, but I was working there, and it went as smooth as silk, which was very unusual considering the nightmare that most computer changeovers are. So we went from paper to computer, and it was incredibly smooth. And that was a testament to how well Clearway Auto Parts, Yaron was running his business. He had a process for everything, and there was a spot for it on the computer. And, the expression, blank in, blank out. And in this case, it was good in, good out. Mm-hmm. And but the problem with the computer system that we had, and everybody in the auto parts business had at that time, was the computers weren't like they are today. They're not really open. You can't do what they wanted, and really the businessmen didn't really know how to use a computer. We could punch a few keys, but we didn't know how to program. We didn't know. We didn't have any of that acumen. It was all new to us. It was a big deal for us just to do a backup tape at the end of the day. So that was really pretty much the limit of our skill set when it came to computers. By the year 2000, it was apparent to me that we were kind of slaves to our computer company. When we wanted to do an acquisition, we'd say, "Okay, we want to buy this company. When can we change it over?" And they'd say June. I'm like, "June? That's great. It's only May." They're like, "No, June 6 years from now." So we'd get on this long line, of things we want to do, and it was really holding up our progress. And remember, 2000 was the tech bubble, and all the stuff was happening all around us. The internet, and our company wasn't going to make it. So I kind of decided we needed to change computer systems to get out from under the thumb of our existing computer provider, technology provider. Got some great advice from this guy, Howard Cohen, who still works with us. He's, an unbelievable guy. And he suggested an AS400 IBM because it had a relational database and we would be able to get all our reporting and be able to have a lot more flexibility. And there was a little consternation among our partners to make a computer change like that, but we did it. And from the moment we did it and got it converted, which wasn't that easy, but it went smoothly, from that moment, that put us on a completely different trajectory. And we were able to do our own computer conversions in-house. We were able to start doing e-commerce business, which we would have never been able to do before.
In the early 2000s.
I would say 2005, 2006.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were able to do things and say yes to them, very early.
Mm-hmm. Did you see like an immediate growth change in the business when you enabled the e-commerce side?
It wasn't just e-commerce. It was everything. In those days, and still today, we get all kinds of requests from fleets, e-commerce companies, even some of the retailers we do business with. They want to do business. They have certain technology requirements, and one of our catchphrases in our company is the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say the answer is yes is we're going to do it if we can physically do it, and unless it's something absolutely crazy. But basically, with the technology upgrade that we had, we were able to say yes to things we couldn't say yes to before. So basically, we could say yes to a lot of things that we couldn't. So it wasn't just e-commerce; it was dozens of other things that we could say yes to.
Can I ask you, as we sit here, we're in Scottsdale, Arizona. Can I ask you how you ended up in Scottsdale as the CEO of a business that's in New York?
Well, there's a lot of people have opinions of that. So when we first got the computer system in 2005, we converted our system, and shortly thereafter we bought a company in Queens, and we were able to put their 4 locations onto our system almost overnight and get them live, on our own system, which was a great feat for us. And we were extremely proud of that. Our team was able to train everybody and get them purchasing and able to use all of the things that we had at Parts Authority. We were able to have all visibility for this new company on our system, which gave us a big advantage in running the new company. And as I said, we were able to start doing e-commerce and things like that. And we continued to expand. We expanded down to Washington, D.C. And how I got to Washington, D.C. was, a fellow Pronto member who was, getting quite old, really wanted me to buy his business. And he kept asking me to come down there. And I thought that's a big stretch from New York to Washington, D.C. But I went down there with my partner, and he liked the building and he liked the other place. And we ended up making that deal. And a lot of people said, "Oh, I know what Randy's doing. He went down to Washington and now he's going to fill back in through New Jersey." And I was like, "I'm glad you know that, because we had absolutely no plans for that." And we did it. We stayed in Washington and we opened up several more places in Washington, Maryland, probably 7 or 8 more places, through 2009 and 2010. And then we were doing a lot of e-commerce, and I wanted to, have the ability to ship from the West Coast. So we looked out in California, and California has some pretty tough laws to do business in, and it was a little scary, and we didn't really find the right situation till one day another Pronto member called and said, "Would you be interested in buying our business in Arizona?" And that's what we ended up doing. That's how I ended up in Arizona. But again, people said, "I know what Randy's doing. He's going to open up in Arizona and he's going to," and I'm like, look, we had absolutely no plan. So a lot of people just kind of decide what we're doing, but we just take advantage of situations that are in front of us. We didn't have any kind of, I'd be lying to you if I said I had any kind of 10-year plan, or there's enough to do with a 1 or 2 year plan. And that's the way I've approached it all these years. So from Arizona, we ended up expanding it to California. We had some great opportunities, and from Washington, we expanded it to, Virginia, Georgia, and then eventually when we bought a large distributor in New York, we ended up expanding it to New Jersey. So finally, many years later, somebody said, "Oh, he's right. You see, I told you you'd end up in New Jersey." So, but that wasn't the plan when we.
So I guess, it's not totally unreasonable to say that, Randy's going to fill in. So I understand that, because the conventional wisdom would say something like, you have your resources here, they can go to X distance. And so, start expanding from there. How did you hire a team to go to Washington or Arizona? Did you physically go yourself? And how?
Well, the first one was Washington that we did out of market, and I absolutely went down to Washington. And I actually stayed down in Washington for quite some time because it blew up so quickly and it happened so fast. The business that we bought was a real sleeper. They were a three-stepper. I'm not sure if you know what a three-stepper is. Three-stepper means traditional warehouse distributor to sell to auto parts stores, and they really didn't sell to repair shops. When we bought it, we converted it to selling to repair shops, and we got extremely busy, extremely fast, and we had to make a lot of changes. So I spent about 6 months down there straight, and so that was interesting. And I did the same thing in Arizona when we expanded out there. So we do take a really strong hands-on presence when we do these things. And as we've expanded in the last few years, certainly with COVID, I stopped being as much of a presence on these conversions as I used to be. During COVID, everybody was kind of on lockdown, but we did manage to have a few expansions during that period of time, but we have an amazing team. And interestingly enough, conversions are really tough when we buy a company or merge with a company, putting them on our computer system. And, everyone talks about the nightmare of doing that. We do it so quickly. That's really our special sauce. We'll close on a deal on a Friday night, 10 locations, and Saturday morning, we're up and running on our system. And to get that done so quickly and efficiently, so much work and planning goes into that. It's a unbelievable thing. And our team is so great at it, the people that are doing it. And it's amazingly enough, the people that are doing it are a lot of the people we just recently got from acquisitions that were like fighting it for the first couple of weeks. And then after a while, they're like, and now an opportunity comes 6 months later to do another acquisition, or a year later. And they're the first people with their hands up, raising, because it's a great testament. They said, I went through this last year, and, first week's going to be tough, but you'll love the way this ends up. And
usually the tech side of the implementation is the hard part, but which one, in your opinion, or in your experience, has been harder, the culture side or the tech implementation side? I don't know how you roll up so many businesses. How many acquisitions have you made in total?
It's been dozens, literally. So, it's all hard. Okay. The technology is certainly hard, and the people who do that on our side, they have it down to a science, and it's unbelievable what they do for that. There's so much preparation, but they do a great job. And we have people in the IT department that work on all the connectivity and all the data conversion, the data loading, and then we have the people in our pricing department, making sure that customers, the day of, are being billed for parts the same price they were the week before when they were owned by somebody else. That's a whole other thing. And the culture is even, that's really, really important, because people get upset with any type of change. In my experience, I remember one of my first experiences with that was when we only had like 4 stores, and we had one warehouse, and the 4th store was a warehouse in Rockville Center. And I remember we combined the offices, and one of the people that worked in the office was really upset one day, and I was like, why are you so upset? What's up? And she was like, at the other store, we keep the envelopes in the left drawer, and now we keep them in the right drawer, but I like them in the left drawer because I'm left-handed. And it was something so meaningless like that, or something so small like that, but was having such a big impact. So I learned never to take it for granted. The slightest thing really throws off people's routine. And it really does. So we have to be really conscious of the cultural impact. One of the things that's really tough, I think, for the folks are sometimes we go in and, we're going to change our lines, the products that we sell a lot of times to the products that Parts Authority sells. And we have relationships with a lot of suppliers and that have been there and we kind of, that have supported us all along, and we want to continue to support them because they work for us. But the customers and some of the workers, they're like, hey, we really love this brand. Can we keep this brand? Can we keep that brand? And sometimes we have to make that decision. And sometimes, if you ask, what do you think? Should we keep this or should we keep that? And if you ask too many questions, people get invested. And then when you make the change, they get upset. So sometimes we just have to, rip the Band-Aid off and make some changes. And so that could be a little harsh for some people. But the culture is a tough thing. One thing I'm really fortunate is the culture at our company is, I believe, the best in the industry. That we have great folks working there. They really care about the company. They care about each other. They police it themselves. And if they see, somebody treating people the wrong way, they jump in, and those kind of people really don't last in our company. So, the culture, the feedback I get all the time from customers and from vendors who work with our people and acquisitions we made is like, I can't believe it. Everybody I work with in your company is so good and so friendly and helpful. So,
but did you just carry the culture of the initial 4 or 5 stores, because they were kind of close family and friends. And, that dynamic, obviously, when you have a tight crew that you see outside of work also because you're related to them and you get to see them at holidays and in non-business, related, events, you build kind of there's a familial bond there. There is a culture there. And were you able, is that what you've kept through the whole time?
Look, in life you have to do you have to do the right things. I don't think a company stays in business for 50 or probably, 52 or 53 years now. If you're not doing the right things all the time, you're not going to stick around in business. So, one of the things I like to say, and, I don't want to beat it to death, but you have to treat your team members right. You have to treat your customers right. You have to treat your suppliers right. And if you do those 3 things, you have a chance. You got to be lucky. A lot of things have to happen, but you have to do those 3. So we always try to take the high road. We always try to underpromise and overdeliver. But I think just in general, we do the right thing in our company, and that goes a long way.
That's the feedback that I got, or the input that I got from you, even from your partners, is that, we love doing business with Parts Authority.
Well, it's before Las Vegas. We haven't beat them up yet. We haven't beat the partners up, in Las Vegas for extra discounts yet. So you talk to them in November, they might not say the same thing.
I will, but like you said, you can't. You've done it 50 years in a row, and you've gone to Vegas, almost that many years. So that's the cycle probably is safe.
Hi, I'm Ted Hughes, Executive Director of AWDA and Senior Director of Community Engagement for the Auto Care Association. We provide our members with numerous avenues for connection and collaboration through our diverse range of committees and communities. Whether you're interested in advancing your career through the Women in Auto Care program or our vibrant Under 40 group, or simply wish to network and glean insights from fellow distributors, shops, and manufacturers, we have dedicated committees and communities eager to connect with you. Learn more at autocare.org podcast.com/communities.
I was super curious as to why your company and your employees and your partners have such it seems like loyalty and affection for the management team of Parts Authority, and also for you. And I found a video of you. Did you like maybe just conceding your salary during COVID to your employees or to people in need during that time? I mean, was that a one-off? Can you tell me a little bit about that story?
Well, not that big a story. COVID was like a crazy thing. I remember being out here in Arizona. It was kind of like at the end of March or the third week of March, and the stock market kept falling. I think the stock market went down like 3,000 points in one day. And we were we weren't sure where it was going to go. I remember our projections for April we said, boy, if we could do 50% of what we did the last April, we would be happy. And, but we ended up doing much better than that. May was better, but, we were cutting back hours and right sizing of the staff. And, we had a lot of concentration in New York and, California, which were pretty hard hit by COVID. And there was a lot of laws. And even though, it was what do they call it? A necessary business or whatever they deemed auto parts. It was, the laws were pretty strict and pretty tough. A lot of people were closed. A lot of people were sick. So I just, for the rest of the year, gave up my salary. And I want to say that my partners did it also. And we kicked that into, a bonus for our team members. At the end of the year, it got split equally among our team.
Maybe you think that a lot of people do that, but there are not many instances of that I've heard of. Well,
people do what they do.
Can we tack this conversation in a different direction? Because the sense of the conversation that I'm getting right now is that, very positive growth culture, technology implementation, business has been successful. But in my perspective, it can't all be like rainbows and butterflies, and you can't always be kind of the conceding, pleasant, nice guy to be successful in such a competitive industry. And so I want to ask you actually a really specific question, but the first time I saw you on stage, the first time I saw you actually was on stage on a panel, and I was standing next to somebody and said, "Oh, it's Randy the Bull." Where did that name come from? Have you heard that?
Yeah, well, my last name is Buller, so some people call me Bull or whatever, Buller, but my email address forever was Randy the Bee. And the reason it was Randy the Bee is like when I first joined AOL, 100 years ago, I went for Randy B and it was taken. So they would recommend a password. They said, well, Randy B's taken, but Randy the Bee isn't. So I picked Randy the Bee, pretty much like that. I didn't want to give up Randy the Bee. I loved it. And a lot of people just call me Randy the Bee. Some people thought it stood for Randy the Bull or whatever, but it's just Randy the Bee.
Okay. So it's not from like you're hard charging or...
I happen to be hard charging. To answer your question about being a nice guy, I'm sure I have some nice guy qualities, but, working with me on a daily basis, the guys who work close with me probably would say I'm a pain in the ass. I follow up on a lot of things. I definitely don't take no for an answer. Very persistent person. I'm sure my vendors feel the same way. So from that standpoint, I wouldn't call myself a nice guy at all. But I think probably like when you have I think probably my teammates that I work that closely with respect it probably in a way, like, you might remember a teacher or two from high school or a coach or two that was pretty rough, but made you better.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, I like to think of it that way.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it just makes total sense because this is your business that you and your partners started and you're in charge of it. And quote that Kevin Plank, who is what's the CEO of Under Armour, is known for saying is that you have to grab your business by the throat and drive it. There's no other way. And so it's totally reasonable that somebody would need to be, a little bit tough about their business because it's yours and you built it and you're growing it. And the success that the business has seen is specifically because of the mentality and the business practices and the discipline of you and your co-founders. That's fair to say?
That is true. I just don't want to, first of all, it's definitely not all about Randy. This company, my partners, are still working today and have been incredibly instrumental throughout all these years and still today. I get a lot of the limelight because my partners did a lot of the stuff that, was not in the limelight. One of my partners, Dave, handled all the insurance, all the accounting, all that stuff, and it's kind of the back office stuff. Yaron, as I said, who started the business, handles all the real estate, and for many years, a million other things in the business. But I was always kind of the front guy who took, worked with the vendors and the sales force and the technology team. So I kind of got the visible job. So, but beyond those partners, there's also literally an army of people. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about the culture today and the people driving the business today, it's those people. And that's what I'm really excited about is, the culture will live because there's, not just 4 of us, there's hundreds of us with that culture that are in the management team. So, that is really, I just want to say this company is really a team effort. It's a big company and there's a lot of people involved. So it's just not a Randy accomplishment at all. As far as like pushing, the initiatives, it's my vision. A lot of it's my vision. And what I find is that the most difficult part is keeping everybody on the same page. Mm-hmm. And when something goes wrong, it's generally a drop in communication. That's the hardest thing and there's all kinds of quotes. If you look up communication quotes on Google, you'll see all these things. But the biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it took place that it happened in the first place, right? And that's the part when we try to crystallize what went wrong with something, it's usually somebody thought someone else was doing it, somebody explained it incorrectly, or the person received the message wrong. So a lot of what I do, believe it or not, is tracking down where that communication broke down. And we have 3 things that we really tell somebody who starts with our company today, and really for the last 20 years, we've been telling them the same thing. If you want to be successful at Parts Authority and really in life, these are 3 in business. These are 3 qualities you need. You need passion. We call fire in the belly. Mm-hmm. If you don't have passion, you can still do well, but you're not going to jump ahead to the top of the class and you're in sports or in academics or in business. You have to have passion if you want to climb to the top. You have to have great technology skills. And it was important 20 years ago, but it's even more important now. Kids today are doing Python and SQL and with AI coming up. If you're not doing that stuff, you're going to be left behind. And and the other thing is communication skills. And that hasn't changed one bit. Communication skills are so important. And some of our people are great at it and some people are not so great at it. And I have to kind of figure out my job, or our COO is Eric Schwartz. He has to figure out in his job how to communicate with each leader. It's different for each people. It's almost like the United Nations, everybody speaks a different language of communication. You have to make sure you're communicating effectively with each person to get message received, message acknowledged.
So, of those three, so passion, computer skills, and communication, I think, like you said, you to solve a problem, it's usually a communication gap, and you can go physically chase it down and figure out what the communication breakdown was. So that feels like a teachable skill. The computer skills, obviously, people can learn your system, can focus on it, but how do you teach the fire in the belly?
You can't. You can't teach the fire in the belly. You either have it or you don't have it. Mm-hmm. And so I can tell you that today, in my own business since 1984. So that's 40 years of being, probably 35 years as CEO. I can count on one hand, still less than 5 people have come to me and said, hey, Randy, you got me doing this, but I want you to know I can do so much more. If you give me a chance, I can do this. I can do this. I'll work hard. I got it. I'll learn. I'll do it. You trust me with more. I can do more. One hand, I can still count it on. And I've been saying that for 20 years. So I tell everybody that's a challenge. So I'm not sure if people don't have that kind of passion, or they don't want to work as hard, or they don't want to achieve it, or if they really don't like working with me and they're like, maybe that's what it is. But if they do, I look at it, I can tell you, speaking with other, people in my position, they kind of say the same thing. Not a lot of people are putting themselves up for it. And I think that's one piece of advice I would give to youngsters out there is, let your boss know you can do more, you want more. And that's a big first step, because the first time a project comes up and I think to myself, okay, who'd be good for this? If I have somebody top of mind, I know who I want to pick. But if I have somebody top of mind that said they could do it, I'm gonna give that.
That's actually really good. That's a really good structure to work with in terms of teaching somebody fire in the belly, because I think it's not exactly synonymous with work hard. Fire in the belly and passion could be interpreted as, okay, I will just do my job with more, focus or effort. But it's not that. It's actually more about commitment to, it sounds like it's more like commitment to your own career and to the business, and to just wanting to produce more of an output for the organization and for yourself. Is that like?
Yeah, it's a tough one, Behzad. It's a tough question. Things have changed from through the years, through the generations, right? So there's a lot of work-life balance talk, these last 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. People talk a lot more today about work-life balance. And that's really important. Work-life balance is extremely important. But, you hear a lot of people that worked their whole life, got burnt out, died at their desk, that type of stuff, or never got to see their children, or didn't get a chance to go to Little League games. And there's, so things have changed, right? You can still, in my opinion, for sure, I have people on my team that have been doing this for 25 years. You could still be a great father and go to coach Little League and still have passion in business. It's not easy to be well balanced. But like I said, people, I have people that work for me that say they want to do these things, but if you want to get to the top of the class, if you want to get ahead, if you want to make the most money in the company, and you want to be the most successful financially or title-wise or whatever, you have to be willing to outperform the rest of the people in the company. It is a competition. And sometimes, there's people that are naturally better at certain things. Some people are better salesmen. Some people are better technologists. Some people are better negotiators. Some people are better with a lot of different skills, right? It doesn't have to be what our company has a lot of different departments that you could be skillful at and rise to the top. But the commitment and the effort has to be there all the time. And there's a big difference from like 1980 to 2025. There's a big difference. And one of the differences is 1980, when I was thinking of going into, business, back in 1980, there was a lot more mom and pop businesses. You could have a stationery store. You could have a shoe store. You could own a restaurant. You could own an auto parts store. You could, go into the clothing business. There was literally hundreds of things people could do, entrepreneurial things. But if you look around the landscape today, you have Home Depot and Lowe's. You're not going to be very successful with a little hardware store. Auto parts. You have these giant, massive retailers. It's really hard to just open up an auto parts store and buy as well and have the economy scale of marketing and all the things that a retailer would have. But pick the industry, restaurants. There's just chain after chain after restaurants, and just about every single business is like that, or every single vertical is like that. So the people that are successful are yesterday's entrepreneurs that own single businesses. Mm-hmm. Back in 1980, you still had to be better than the next guy. You opened a store. If you wanted to stay in business, if you had a clothing store, you had to be better than the other clothing stores. You couldn't mail it in. You got lucky for a couple of years, but if you wanted to be in business for 30 years, you had to be very good, and you had to work hard, and you had to have a great system. And today, that translates to the people, at these chains like my locations, or some of the other guys in our business, like a Fisher or Factory Motor Parts or AutoWares or AutoZone or any of these chains. The people that are leaders in those companies are yesterday's entrepreneurs, and they have to have the same dedication and passion and drive to be successful in those jobs. And some of them have it.
Mm-hmm. So you said you could name like 5 people who you think had that drive in your company, have come to you and said, I can do more. Were any of those in the past 10 years? Were any of those people in the past 10 years? Then when you said you've had on one hand, you can name.
Yeah. They're all still, they're still working.
I guess I mean, is there, you mentioned in the last 10 years, there's this concept of work-life balance has really kind of come in a lot more as a a demand of employees. But
it's not a demand of employees. I call them team members. There are teammates. Mm-hmm. And I don't. Work-life balance is a real thing, and it's a good thing. But there's a way to do it, especially, with COVID. Everybody started working at home, and that became a thing in our country and around the world. A lot of people love to work from home, but of the people, not everybody's cut out to work from home. Mm-hmm. Right? Some people, especially younger people, really need to learn in an office environment. It's really tough. Or they need to learn in a store environment. That's where you pick up a lot of vital information about face-to-face interaction, sales, dealing with people. It's a completely different, setup today than it was 20 or 30 years. But achieving work-life balance is so much easier today. I had a long drive yesterday. I was on the phone the entire time on the long drive. So, I was driving for 5 hours, but I was able to do business calls the entire 5 hours. It was practically working. If I take a plane today, I log in and I'm at my laptop the entire time. So that wasn't available 30 years ago. So work-life balance is definitely achievable.
Do you think technology is the ability to kind of be on the road and, balance your work and your life, meaning you can kind of if you're, let's just assume you're a hardworking and successful employee, but your job is kind of wherever you are, technology enables that. Do you think everyone perceives it that way? Or sometimes is the perception that technology enables me to do my job faster, so I can shut down earlier and I can go get my work-life balance?
I will tell you a story. There was a guy, I spoke at a Yang conference like 10 years ago, and a guy, they asked me to speak at a Yang conference, young automotive
Networking group.
Right? And it's always a great group, and I love working with those guys and girls. And this guy says to me, I took this job and at a place, and after about a month, some guy quit, and they gave me his job to do too. I'm like, okay. And he goes, so I'm doing 2 jobs. I'm like, okay. And he goes, but I'm done by 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, okay. So he says, well, I feel like I should be able to leave like at least by 12. Like, I'm doing 2 jobs. Why, I should leave at 12. I'm like, I don't think that's how it works. He goes, well, I'm good at computers and I'm able to do those jobs, so like, why would I was able to automate this and do that? So why would it be tough? So I still was never able to get through to the guy. And I said, look, eventually I was like, look, guys like me who are 30 years older than you, we also have computers, and I don't look to go home at 11 o'clock. I look to work till 11 o'clock, because now I could stay along even, I could stay around later. Yeah, maybe I would have had to retire 15 years ago if I didn't have computers. But now I have all this power in front of me to work faster and work better. And you might not have competition in that one office you were working from in California, but you got plenty of competition in the world. People are out there, busting their butt to get it done, and they're using everything in the world, including artificial intelligence. So it's not going to get any easier out there. It might appear to you, but my advice to everybody is it's still a competition out there. And I, personally, maybe it's my age, I know it's important to have a positive attitude and positive reinforcement for everything. But in business, you really don't get trophies for coming in 4th place in business and 5th place in business. You really have to do a better job if you want to stay in business and you want to pay your bills and pay your teammates good wages and provide the level of service that you need to your customers and all that stuff. You have to win. You can't come in 3rd or 4th and expect those things to happen. And that's one of the tough things that I have. I might not be saying it right, but on one hand, you have to win. On the other hand, you have to respect the differences in generations and people's needs.
If I can kind of replay what I think you just said, is that
I confused myself. So.
No. I thought it was actually really, really eloquent and thoughtful. I think that you were kind of juxtaposing the dynamic between technology enabling us to do more, but that doesn't mean work less. It actually means you can be more efficient and get more done, and you need to constantly evolve in technology, because you always have to keep track of the objective to win, and you have to outcompete on the technology. You have to get every edge and every advantage you can, because you can't lose sight of the fact that you have competition abroad and also in the workforce. So you can't lose sight of the objective to win. Is that a fair?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And do you find that there's a kind of going back to communication gaps, a communication gap on that critical component there being the win part, that, you have to, it's not like there are no trophies for everybody kind of thing. I think that's a knock.
My experience in business is there's a limit to how much profit you can make. We're not trying to, break the bank, but there's a limit. Your customers won't let you charge a certain amount. You have to provide a certain amount of service, pricing, competent people. And if you don't do that, you're not going to get the business. So you have to you have to do it to a certain level. But there's nothing stopping on the downside. If you're selling too cheap, nobody's going to say, hey, I could buy it for more somewhere else. People will continue. So there's no the stopgap on losses.
Right.
It's very easy to lose money. So I wish I could just put a plug in and say, okay, I'm automatically setting my margins to this amount, my payroll to this amount, and everything's going to stay the same. But conditions today are so dynamic that it's constantly changing. And we have to be so on our game just to make sure, everything's working. And
I think I was addressing more a question about, is there a generation gap? Is there a generational gap between, there's this knock, I think, that the new generations, everyone gets a trophy, and, or the younger generation, not the new generation, but that everyone gets a trophy, and, that we kind of need to be sensitive to employees' needs and various sensitivities. And I acknowledge that on one hand, but I also am just curious how you have adapted to that, because it's a reality of the workforce in a way. But you clearly, just through your energy and through your history, it's clear that, since 1984, when you were running your business, to now, you've seen a ton of change. You've had to hire, people in different age groups and different generations who have different experiences, to different walks of life in different geographies. But now you are, 40 years into it, and you're hiring people in their 20s. So is that gap hard to bridge sometimes, because is it very different than it used to be? Or
well, it helps being a parent, right? So I have two children in the 30s, right? So
they work at your company, right?
Yeah, they work for the company. They're great, but it helps that I have a relationship with them and a relationship with their friends, so kind of know what that generation's how they think. But we've also done plenty of training on the different generations and what a baby boomer like myself, values, and what, each generation values. There's been 3 or 4 different ones, what each one's value, how they rate the different things in their life. But I will tell you that, one of the things that, it's not a pet peeve, but it's another piece of advice, today, and for years now, they've been telling kids in school, hey, you're going to change jobs. You're probably going to have 10 different jobs in your life, et cetera, et cetera. I know in a company like ours, and I've seen it firsthand with lawyers and things like that. There's a lot of value in sticking out in your job. And if someone might switch a job after 2 years and go to another company and switch for 3 years and go to a headhunter. And there's plenty of those companies around, Monster and all of those, types of companies. But I can tell you, in a company like ours, if people, and many other companies, if you stick around and you do your thing and you have that desire and you have put that effort in, you're going to end up at the top of the class if that's what you want. If you're trying to make your way to the top, you're in. A lot of people are in the right spot. They just don't know it. But the timing not be right. I mean, the timing, they might want to earn that much in 3 months from now or next week, but there might be somebody in that job. But if they stay through and do the right things, they have to have confidence in their own ability, their time will come. And I know in our company, we have a lot of those opportunities are coming every day. And some people have done a great job taking advantage of those spots that opened up. And
how do you personally, it sounds like you had to just navigate a ton of change on your side of the equation, just being Randy Bowler. I mean, how do you think about change? How do you think about evolving and changing?
I personally think, I am a change ready person, like to the extreme. I personally think that there are times when, I've been called stubborn, but I think I'm a change ready person. And, part of it has to do with, all these conversions that we do, and I'm maybe a little bit immune to it, but I've been through so many changes in this business that if you're not changing a little bit every day with the times, then one day you wake up and your compass is pointed in the opposite direction, and you'll never be able to turn fast enough. So I really do believe you have to make small incremental changes every day. And again, a lot of them are communication based. Is everybody even on the same page of where we're going? Change is an important. Look at our society. Look at like what's going on just today with artificial intelligence. Like they're predicting massive change. So like if you're not ready to make some changes, what's going to happen? You're going to be left behind.
So change is hard, but positioning yourself to be ready to change is probably the takeaway from that. Moving from change to kind of like decision making. I saw a LinkedIn post that you wrote, and the conclusion of it was so helpful for me. Sometimes I tend to look for the perfect answer or the right answer. I call it threading the needle, and it comes with obviously a lot of brain power and sometimes more time than needed. And reading your post kind of helped. And the conclusion of it, I'd like for you to talk about that a little bit, but the conclusion of it was something along the lines of, you either make the right decision or you make the decision right. It's the follow-up of the decision that is the most important part of it. So that was helpful for me. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
Sure. First of all, if there's 100 decisions to be made, 80 of them are easy, right? You have all the information, and if you ask 10 competent people, they'll make the same decision. So it's an easy decision, right? The tough decisions are the ones that are like 50-50 or 55-45 or 45-55 or 60-40. Should we do this or should we do this? And if you ask 10 people, 4 people say this and 6 people say that. Those are the tough decisions, but sometimes you have to make those decisions. For instance, you're dealing with a fuel pump company that goes out of business. Well, you have to pick competitor A or competitor B, and 4 people say pick competitor A, and 6 people say pick competitor B. Well, what do you choose? Well, there's obviously good reasons for both, right? This is just a silly example, but there's good reasons for both, right? So you're going to pick one, but then you have to stack the deck in your favor, right? You said you pick one. So what are you going to do to influence it? You have to do a lot of work. You got to make people know your brand. You have to make sure your pricing is competitive. You have to make sure you get buy-in to the customers that did prefer the other brand. And you have to explain your reasons why. And then you have to monitor it. And you have to make sure that you're selling more fuel pumps 3 months later than you were 3 months earlier. You want to make sure that this change exceeded expectations. And if they didn't, what happened? What went wrong? And, that goes back to the communication. Oh, we never followed up. Oh, wow, we didn't realize we lost that account. So what went wrong? So the follow-up and, dogging it until you get it right. That's the real key to good decision making there. And my friend Robbie, who's in the business, Robbie Reefberg, is the guy who says, either make the right decision or make the decision right. He's the one who says that, and I agree with him.
I love that line. So I'm going to ask Robbie.
It's his only good line.
Yeah, I'm asking for permission to borrow it too, and I'm going to tell him.
He'll rent it to you. He's a rep. He charges 3%.
That's a pretty fair rate for that wisdom. But when you're making decisions, a lot of them come with risk. Can you just talk about how you think about taking risks for your business? Is it along the same lines of we just got to follow through and make it, mitigate the risk downside as much as possible? Or is it that you calculate a bunch up front?
Well, I'm not a risk averse person. I think we're really good at auto parts. And so, like, a lot of our acquisitions have been risky. We've expanded to different areas, but we were very successful in Washington, D.C., and Maryland. We were very successful in Arizona. So we were kind of replicated what we were doing in New York. So when I expanded to a new region now, we kind of expect that we're going to do pretty well. And we have a good formula. And so it's not as risky as we thought. We thought we know we can do a good, solid computer conversion. We know that our people are great, and we're going to take. We know we have confidence and trust in ourselves, and we know that the acquisitions we made and the team members we have are going to speak well on our behalf because they've had positive experiences, and so like those types of things aren't that risky. I don't think I do any crazy stuff, and I always check myself: is this crazy, or but. We'll do some cutting edge things, and
if you're comfortable sharing, can you tell me about a time when you took a risk? And I mean, you have 40 plus years of experience here, so it might be tough to recall. Although you seemingly have just an impeccable memory. When you took a risk and it was just an absolute home run. Or just made a decision, and when the outcome was like catastrophic. The way I think of these things, just from like a human level, is that there are some moments in our lives that stand out to us, and they're just burned in our memories. We know the exact location, setting, time, how we felt in that moment. There's some kind of societal events that happen, and we're all kind of like subject to them. We all can place ourselves exactly in 40 years of business, because basically it's been parallel to your life the entire time. Do you have those kinds of memories where when you think of like something that went wrong, there's just this one thing, or something that went amazingly right, there's this one thing?
Well, first of all, it's important to separate personal from business, right?
Yeah.
So thank God our business has been, very successful, knocking on wood, over the years. And I can't think of anything that we did catastrophic at all, nothing even close. But, on a personal level, there's, I've been around and seen it firsthand, many terrible, terrible things. And one thing I always ask, and I advise and talk about it with, close people, and it's a good piece of advice for anybody when something's bothering you, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is this really? And, the dog's leash, not being that great is not a 10, it's a 1, but somebody, who's sick, that's a 10, or somebody who died suddenly, that's a 10, right? So nothing in business has ever been, other than the personal tragedies that happen. There's been stuff like that, but we haven't had any kind of, business thing that's even on that chart.
Mm-hmm.
So let's set that thing.
Yeah, thanks.
But so a lot of the things that happen in business, look, I don't like when we hate to lose a customer. That's happened over the years. It's happened a couple times where customer got really mad at us, or vice versa. We hate that. We try to do the right thing for our customers all the time. We hate to part ways with a team member. It's both ways. If we have to part ways with that team member, or a team member quits us, that's very personal. We hate that. But I guess, some of the things is occasionally we butt heads with a supplier, and, they're trying to stay in business and we're trying to stay in business. And even though we can do great things together, sometimes our interests are diametrically opposed, because we're, it comes down to, we need to buy it for less and they need to sell it for more. And sometimes that creates a little bit stress but I can't think of a single thing. Now, I can tell you that when we do acquisitions, especially the bigger ones, and we've done a few of those, starting with, I guess, the first real, major one that was, well, I guess Washington, D.C. cost me a little stress in the beginning. I was down there for 6 months, but then when we bought Woodbury in the Bronx, it was a big distributor. By the time we got it up and running and we got things going, but by the time all the, noise went away and my life got back to normal, that probably was a year. When we expanded in Atlanta, it was another year that kind of, before things got all calm again. When we bought Metro in California, that was a real year of turmoil. And so, and when we bought IMC from AutoZone back in 2018, another year of my life and a lot of our team was in turmoil. But I guess one of the things I would say during those times was, if you want diamonds, one of the things that you're going to have, one of the ingredients is pressure.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure that goes into those things, but you don't get from point A to point B without that. And so when we take on an opportunity like that, we know we're signing up for some pressure. And so those, I wouldn't say they were catastrophic, but I would say
they're challenging, and they put the business under pressure, put you personally under pressure, the team under pressure. And does that stop you from, is there kind of like a reflection period and you're like, I can't go through that again anytime soon? Or,
actually all four of those that I mentioned or five worked out beautifully, unbelievably well. Mm-hmm. But like what you discussed earlier, like the cultural changes, the line changes, putting up with it. Actually, you know what carries me through it though, Behzad?
Tell me.
I'm doing this really since 1980. I'm in the auto parts business, and from the very beginning, Yaron took me in, and from the very beginning, like we are a family business. So from the very beginning, even before I had an ownership stake in the business, we were always trying to improve this business. And so now it's from 1980 to it's 45 years, okay, that I've been in the business, okay? Every single one of those days, we have tried to make our company better, right? So no matter what happens, good or bad, if something bad goes on, I could get on with that customer myself or supplier or teammate and say, we have tried to make this thing better every single day for 45 years. And before me, the 10 years that was around before me, or 7 years before I came on, every single day, this company has tried to get better and do the right thing. And if something happens to go wrong, I could trace it back to what went wrong, why it went wrong, and what we did about it. And I will never feel bad or make an apology. I'll make an apology if someone got a wrong delivery or late delivery or somebody did something wrong, but I never have to apologize for the effort that goes into this company. Nobody works harder than our company at doing the right thing for all of our constituents that are involved here, including the industry in general. So I know that I have something to sell. And the one thing I learned as somebody in sales, if you believe in what you're selling, it's the easiest thing to sell. And the easiest thing in the world for me to sell to anybody is Parts Authority. It's the easiest thing because I know what I put into it. It's a lot of days. It's a lot of hours. That's the easiest thing for me to sell.
That's awesome. So you mentioned your competitors, the competitive dynamics are only getting harder. You're finding some of them move into your market a little bit. And, we spent a lot of time on the last 45 years, but as you think about the future, turning the lens the other way, the next maybe 10 years, 5 years, how do you see the market kind of shaping up?
Well, it's a great question. So, I'll answer your question in terms of competition, right? So they say if you're running from a bear, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You have to be faster than your friends. Okay. And because the bear's going to catch somebody, and the bear's not going to catch Parts Authority. Right. So, when I look at our competitors, like, yes, it's competitive and there's more challenges. There's technology challenges, cultural challenges, there's workforce challenges, there's tariffs, there's inflation, there's all these, incredible challenges in our business. And some of them weren't there 10 years ago, some of them were. But the fact remains, everybody is playing under the same circumstances, everybody. So whether the retailers want to be, if the retailers want to be more like a traditional aftermarket distributor and do more deliveries to repair shops, they have to put a lot more into their service than they ever did. They have to put a lot more inventory on their shelf. This is going to really drive up their expenses really, really high. Mm-hmm. And as far as, very comfortable with, competing against the retailers. I'm very comfortable competing against the biggest of our competitors. And look, we do try to come in first place. We try to be first call. We try to be the best of the group. And so, for the foreseeable future, I think we're doing all the right things to do that. And I feel very good. I feel very good about the auto parts business. I think EV will play a small part in it, but, not for a very long time. And if ever in the United States, and the aftermarket has always been able to change and been able to answer the call. We deal with the best suppliers in the world, and I have a Parts Authority remains a very, very large percentage of branded parts. Our suppliers are mostly the top brands in the industry. It's still a good 85-90% of our business. Some of our competitors have, gone to all private brand and outsourcing. And while there's a place for it, there's also a place for the branded parts. I think technicians know exactly what they're getting when they open the box. It's not like a retail customer who, might buy parts once or twice a year. A technician is buying parts 10 times a day, and they know exactly what's in the box, and they know exactly what they're getting. And these guys are craftsmen, and they're really good at it. And so I love to stick with the brands and what the brands represent, and we try to have a symbiotic relationship with them, so it's beneficial to both of us. So
that's great. So in all of this conversation, I've picked up notions of, thankfulness for your success and gratitude. And is that a practice of yours, or am I just like kind of reading into it a little bit?
Gratitude is a practice. And it's a good, healthy, you asked earlier about what, have you had any catastrophes, and you got to ask yourself, is this a 1 or is this a 10, mm-hmm. right? And on the grand scale of life, most business things are not a 10, but in the grand scale of business, things can be a 10, right? So, but I was lucky enough to run into a gentleman many years ago at Canyon Ranch, and he actually was like a life coach or gratitude coach, and he makes a big deal, and I still get an email from him. His name is Jerry Posner. I still get a thing every Tuesday. It's Gratitude Tuesday, and I never ever go without opening his email every Tuesday. I will not open that email. I open it and read it, and it's just to be grateful for the small things. I mean, he's grateful for coffee, a laptop, his dog, and I have my own gratitude list that I have. It's maybe 7 or 8 things that if I'm feeling down on myself a little bit, I'll open that thing up and just say, yeah. So gratitude is really fun. In fact, I hired that guy, and he spoke to probably 200 or 300 of our people. We flew him around the country. He was in California, Georgia, many different regions, and we had him in there for a couple of days. And our team thought it was a nice little touch.
So that's why your team, I think, there's so much camaraderie, it sounds like, in your organization, at least from what I pick up, because when you discover something that helps you, share it with your team. You know,
I hope so. I mean, again, this is my opinion. You know, my opinion is I have a good sense of humor. My friend Rob Feinerman tells me it's only my suppliers and my team members that laugh at me.
Yeah.
But at my jokes.
I've heard you have jokes, and you haven't shared any yet, but maybe we get an opportunity to share one. When you share things with with your company, and I think that's probably part of your success in terms of keeping a team together. Do you have like special communication practices that you think are fairly unique that you've discovered that maybe I could take back to my team?
Well, before COVID, our company was doing the video chat thing. I think the first one we used was, Skype. And, as we expanded to Washington and Arizona and Georgia, we're all over the country. Sometimes our teammates would say, okay, I've got to go down to Georgia. I'm like, what are you going there? Oh, I got a meeting. I'm like, you're not going to Georgia for a meeting. Like, what? That's crazy. The airport is, takes an hour and a half just to get through the airport. Like, why can't you just, have a phone call or do a Skype? So we got everybody on Skype. And then after a while, Skype wasn't really very secure. So we went to, I think it was Google Chats. And so probably 3 or 4 years before COVID, our whole company was on Google Chat. So we could reach anybody, anytime. And like I said, there's certain people in the company that are great with communication. So you need somebody who, it's like, back then it was like the Jetsons, right? Like it was almost futuristic. But you could have meetings, you could talk to people face to face. And what I really enjoyed is working with the younger folks in my company. Like my son and daughter is one of them. My son and a bunch of other guys, in their like late 20s and 30s. And when I was like kind of working, showing them the business and teaching the business, and a couple other guys, my age were working with them, we would drop these cultural references, like from a movie or something, and our people would be like, they wouldn't know what we were talking about. And fortunately, there was YouTube. So they're like, okay, you don't get that? So I put on a film clip from the movie Stripes, or a film clip from The Exorcist, or a film clip from, 100 different movies. And I'd say, this is what I was referring to.
That's such a good move.
And so not only do we have, now we can share those cultural references, but that's a big deal, right? All these, we saw, back then we didn't have video games and all that stuff. We had movies and TV shows. And so that was one great way to bridge the generation gap, the generation gap, you can still call it that. And we have a lot of fun with it and, make jokes about it. And, same thing with music. Some of the guys are really into music. So we share music back and forth and lyrics and things like that. I have a couple of guys that are really into that. And so you find a common ground. But I find that's a great way to relate to different people. And they relate back that way.
I'm happy to hear I'm not alone on the movie clips. I had a coworker once kind of critique me. I was talking to a guy that I worked with, and we just all day were going back and forth on movie quotes. And she said, I don't get it. Why is it that you can remember a quote from the most obscure movie you've seen once, like 20 years ago, but you cannot remember my birthday, which is the same day every single year? And I just said, I don't know, but it's really helpful that, there's a message that we can convey to each other through this thing, and just like a quote of a movie. So I'm glad I'm not alone on that.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole, you should ask her if it's on a 1 to 10, how big is that?
It came off as a 10, so I didn't really dig in. So thinking about the whole, everything to date, your career, all the acquisitions, starting when you started with the business the way it was, and the talent the way it was and having to navigate it all the way through now. If you had to start over today and, just you were 24 again or 23, could you do it all over again?
I would say yes. I know I have somebody starting in our company who's 40 and he's, having a kid. He's recently married, and I'm starting him as at the bottom, knowing he's going to have a fast rise. But this is the way to learn the business. So, if you want to be in the auto parts business, learn the auto parts. Everybody I know in the auto parts business started as a driver or a stockman, went to work, however they got there. And whether it was a family business or they just took a job and they started learning, and then there was another job to do. And the successful people, like I said, took the initiative into their own hand. They didn't have to wait. If they were a stockman and there was a line of people at the counter, they started helping customers. And the next time it was busy, so it's hey Jimmy, get up here and help, And that's how people get ahead. That's what you do in any business. So the answer is whatever I would do would kind of be this. That's whether it's sports or anything else, playing an instrument. In business, you have to do those things. You got to put the hours in to be good at it. Well,
I can't thank you enough for this conversation. I want to ask, I have this kind of final question. It's oriented around, you have influenced so many people in your role. You've worked with so many people have worked with you. You've had vendors that work with you, partners that work with you, business partners, employees, and you've had an impression on all of them. And if you think about your own life, there are people that your dad's friend who steered you towards accounting, gave you that advice. Obviously that has never left you. If I talk to somebody who worked with Randy Bowler 5-10 years from now, what do you want them to say about you? What do you want them to say the impression that you had on them was, or the lesson that you left them with?
I guess I pride myself by, I like to think of myself as always taking the high road, always doing the right thing. But, as a hard worker and not taking no for an answer, and have the courage of my convictions, and being, a good teacher and a good mentor. My partner, Yaron, was like the best teacher I ever, he was such a great teacher to so many of us. So, as a role model, I thought of that. Like the last, 10 or 15 years, the last 10 years or so, I've worked so hard on, bringing in the next generation of talent to Parts Authority, but not only bringing in younger people, but spending so much time with them, teaching them the job and the nuances of the job and, how to make those decisions themselves. And it's almost like our meetings on Google Chat are frequently like game shows. Like, okay, here's the question. Okay, what's your answer? And this might be 5 or 6 of us, and I make them write it down on a piece of paper, including myself, and we'll all hold up our answer. Who's the closest? Because it's always, it always depends on the situation. So, but we have people in, pricing and negotiating and replenishment and IT and HR and operations that are like, I have a guy, my operations, I can't even say, each one of those departments is like really deep with young people. When I say young, ready to go another 20 years easy, at a very, very high level. They're very, very highly trained. And so I feel really great about that. That's the one. So if I would look back and say, that's what I would want people to say, and say, wow, we really trained we really built a really strong organization, because it's not the same as running one store. Yeah. It's like it evolved into this 300 locations plus business. And how can we, what were the needs of that 300 plus business to go forward. So I think that that's what I'm proud of, and that's what I think the legacy of our company would be.
That's amazing.
Not that I'm going anywhere.
No, clearly not. You still have a ton of energy, obviously. You said you're a joke teller. You wanna send us out with a couple jokes?
I'd love to send you out with a couple jokes, but my HR department has discouraged me from telling jokes over the years, and it'd be very hard for me to tell a joke without offending somebody.
That's
so
fine. Okay.
I want to take the high road on the joke telling.
All right. You mentioned your business partner, Yaron, a lot. What do you think you'd say about you if I asked him about you? You know, like what kind of funny thing would he leave me with?
He's got a lot of funny stories about me and vice versa, but he's a great joke teller too, but probably a great teacher. But the funniest thing one of the things that always makes me laugh about Yaron is, like, over the years, he's given me advice, and frequently I put that advice into play, and I'll go back to him like a couple of years later, and I'll go like, I did that thing. He's like, what thing? He's like, remember you told me when this happens and this happens, do this? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I did that, and it worked like a charm. And he goes, you did that? I'm like, yeah, and it worked like a charm. And he's like, I was only kidding. Like, I can't believe you did that. I'm like, yeah. I was, what do you mean you were only kidding? And so he's done that. He goes, I don't even remember telling you that. Like,
some high stakes practical jokes.
Yeah. So sometimes stuff like that happens.
That's funny. Randy, this was amazing. I really appreciate you sitting down and spending the time with me. And I think people are going to love this. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Auto Care on Air. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so that you never miss an episode. And don't forget to leave us a rating and a review. That helps others discover our show. Auto Care on Air is a production of the Auto Care Association, dedicated to advancing the auto care industry and supporting professionals like you. To learn more about the association and its initiatives, visit autocare.org.